Meghan ever mentioned that they were racist?
Oh,
there was concern about his skin colour.
Right.
There was going to be people or bodies left in the street because of that.
Prince Harry's past just caught up with him, and it's making waves. One of his exes just broke her silence, and her words are sparking serious royal drama. What did she say? Why now? The timing feels planned. You won't believe the implications. Stick around, and don't forget to subscribe. One calm, composed interview, and just like that, the royal rumor mill went into overdrive. Prince Harry's ex, someone who's stayed silent for years, has finally spoken out. And even though she didn't raise her voice, the internet certainly did. Her words weren't dramatic, they weren't even angry, but they hit hard, harder than anyone expected. Why? Because when someone from Harry's past speaks up, people listen. And this time, what she said has sparked questions the royal family wasn't ready to answer. This didn't feel like a random interview. It felt timed, carefully placed, and every sentence from her felt like it was chosen with intention.
No parent wants to hear that their child will suffer, that they will face.
She didn't spill secrets or make accusations. Instead, she offered a quiet but clear reflection on who Harry was before the headlines, the documentaries, and the best-selling memoirs. She spoke about a man who once seemed grounded, thoughtful, even if he was already feeling the weight of royal life. Was she just sharing her truth? Or was she planting the first seed of something bigger? Strangely, she never mentioned Meghan, not once. But that silence? It said more than words ever could. The ex described relationships that lose direction under pressure. She talked about choices made for love that don't always lead where you expect. And she hinted, just hinted, that sometimes you don't realize what you've lost until it's already gone.
Established, I suppose. I'm sure she's longing for me to have kids and so she can be a grandmother again. But
The subtext was clear. This wasn't just about Harry. It was also about the world he stepped into, and maybe the person who led him there. Then came the real shocker. While the internet was still reacting to the ex's quiet revelation, something far more official was brewing back in the UK. Parliament began actively discussing whether Harry should lose his royal titles. And they weren't just talking, they were looking at using a century-old law that once applied only in extreme cases. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about an ex speaking up. It became about whether the Duke of Sussex would even be allowed to use that title anymore. Let's be honest, titles in the royal world are more than fancy names. They carry weight, influence, access. And for Harry and Meghan, those titles have followed them into every deal, every show, every appearance. Without Duke of Sussex or Her Royal Highness, the power behind their brand starts to fade. Supporters argue Harry has earned his voice.
The decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise.
But critics say he's cashing in on the very institution he chose to leave. The question is, can you walk away from duty and still keep the benefits? And what about Prince William? He hasn't said a word, but insiders say that silence might be intentional. According to reports, William isn't blocking Parliament's efforts. In fact, he may even be quietly supporting them. To him, this isn't just about family. It's about preserving the future of the monarchy. He's been known to keep personal feelings tightly guarded. But when it comes to protecting the crown, even family might come second. His silence, some say, is his final answer. Then there's King Charles. Calm on the outside, but sources say deeply upset behind closed doors. Not because of public drama, but because of what it's doing to the institution he's waited a lifetime to lead. But here's what's interesting. Charles isn't taking action himself.
an escape from all sorts of intrusion, but I also felt as though I was really...
He's letting Parliament lead. Why? Because if they remove Harry's titles, the consequences won't look personal. They'll look like protocol. And for Charles, that means no public battle, no direct blame, just a clean break, decided by others. As if that weren't enough, Meghan found herself in the spotlight again, but this time over something as simple as a gift basket. A small gesture sent after a podcast interview sparked massive backlash. Why? Because the note on it used the title, Her Royal Highness, a style Meghan had agreed not to use after stepping back from royal duties. To many, it seemed minor. But to royal insiders and a watchful public, it crossed a serious line. Quiet or not, the message. What's perhaps most surprising is how the public has responded. Frustration has been building for a long time, and now it's turning into action.
And so I think for a lot of people, the biggest question was, what happens now?
Thousands of people, including many from Sussex itself, have signed petitions demanding that Harry's titles be legally removed. And this isn't loud online outrage. It's quiet, determined, and backed by official process. One comment that stood out? He doesn't represent us anymore, he represents himself. That one line seemed to echo across the country. Here's where things get even more serious. If the titles are officially removed, the impact won't just be symbolic. It could be financial. The royal connection is what gave their content and appearances that unique edge. Without it, experts warn, the couple's public image could shift fast. No more royal insiders. No more elevated branding. Suddenly, they'd just be celebrities, with a complicated past and fewer reasons for the media to stay invested. That thin golden thread, the one tying them to the crown, may be all that's holding the brand together. So now we return to the moment that started it all, Harry's ex, and the calm but deeply resonant words she finally chose to share. It wasn't a tabloid exclusive. It wasn't a tell-all with dramatic music in the background. It was measured, thoughtful, and, for many, completely unexpected. She didn't seem angry. She didn't seem bitter. And that's exactly why her voice stood out. When someone speaks without obvious emotion but with clear intent, it makes you lean in. It makes you wonder what they're not saying.
Forgive, but there needs to be conversations and then in order for reconciliation. And
People expected drama. Instead, they got clarity, and that can be far more powerful. One of the most striking things she said was about the difference between rebellion and rediscovery. She hinted that Harry may have thought he was reclaiming his life, but could have been losing a piece of himself in the process. That kind of insight can only come from someone who knew him before the spotlight fully took over, before the royal crisis turned into a media mare. She didn't paint him as a villain. In fact, she complimented his warmth and the way he used to carry emotional depth. But in the same breath, she raised an eyebrow metaphorically at the direction he's taken. That's what has everyone talking. It's subtle, but it carries weight. It wasn't a swipe at Meghan. It wasn't even directly aimed at the monarchy. It was a moment of reflection, and it sounded like it came from someone who had been watching quietly and could no longer stay silent.
Wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories...
And what about Meghan's total silence in response? No social posts, no subtle quotes, no clever PR pivots. That absence of a response feels almost louder than a headline. Could it be that Meghan is choosing not to dignify the comment? Or is she watching closely, calculating when and if to respond? Let's not forget, in today's world, silence is rarely just silence. It can be strategy. Some believe this ex was stepping in to defend Harry from the storm. Others think she's making sure the world knows the Harry she remembers isn't the Harry we see now. But here's where it gets truly interesting. If this ex has more to say, and she might, what comes next could shift the conversation all over again.
Decisions to be made, and like, what can our offering be at this point that is larger than what's sold out?
Because this didn't feel like a one-off. It felt like a quiet beginning. And when someone starts speaking after years of silence, especially when the timing aligns with Parliament, public petitions, and palace tension, you have to ask, is this just the first voice, or is this the start of a chorus? So here we are, with a question that's simple on the surface but incredibly complicated underneath. Can you step away from a system, criticize its traditions, publicly air its secrets, and still wear the titles that system gave you? For many, that answer is now crystal clear. If you've chosen independence, you should also accept the separation that comes with it. But for Harry, the reality isn't that clean. Because this isn't just about status. It's not even just about public opinion. It's about identity. For over 3 decades, Harry lived under the weight and the privilege of being a royal. He was the spare, the military man, the boy who walked behind his mother with the world watching.
Who will get fed up, and all these young feel nothing is ever happening, so of course they're going to get frustrated.
Everything about his public and private life was shaped by the institution. And now, after years of interviews, deals, and deeply personal revelations, He may be about to lose the last piece of that identity. Losing a title sounds symbolic, but in this case, it's everything. Every project Harry and Meghan have launched since stepping back has been rooted in royal mystique. That was their edge. That was the reason producers, publishers, and global platforms lined up to work with them. They weren't just celebrities, they were royalty in exile. And that branding, it worked for a while. But now, if Parliament moves forward and the Titles Deprivation Act is officially triggered, all of that changes. Let's picture it.
He won't be given security. He's not going to be given a title.
Imagine the next public event Harry attends. Cameras flashing, reporters circling, and instead of being introduced as His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex, the announcer simply says, Mr. Harry Windsor. No title, no distinction, just a name. To some, that might sound freeing. To others, it's a public reset, a royal erasure, a sign that whatever thread was still connecting Harry to the crown has finally been cut. And what about Meghan? Her brand, her image, her podcast voice? It's all been rooted in the blend of royal tradition and modern activism. Without the Duchess label, she becomes a former actress and podcast host with a complicated history. Still influential? Absolutely. But the air of exclusivity? That's harder to maintain. And how do you think Meghan's silence fits into all of this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading every single one. And if you want more deep dives like this, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to this story than anyone realizes, and trust us, the next twist is coming.